shorter is 1, 3b. And now we're comparing real numbers.
All right.
So you have probably learned before what an inequality is. Does that word sound familiar to you?
Yes.
Do you know what they look like?
Sort of.
An inequality? Those are a lot of times teachers will refer to them as like a crocodile or a Pac-Man, right? Eat the bigger number, that type of thing. Basically, an inequality is just a math sentence that compares two numbers using an inequality symbol. So inequalities are going to look like this. Do you know how you say this symbol? Less than, right? This is less than. Okay, what's this one? Greater than. Okay, this one? Less than or equal to. That's an A. Less than or equal to. And then this one is greater than or equal to. Okay, so we're gonna work with some inequalities. I just have two examples for you, two types of examples for you. We'll do a couple from each, but you're gonna be comparing numbers. You're gonna say this number is less than this number, or this number is greater than this number. It's comparison, okay? Good to do in math, not good to do in life. Don't compare yourself to people. You are who God made you to be. So this is going to say, write the inequality that makes this true. So let's say for our first one here, we have the square root of 17 and then an open box. We're going to put our inequality in there. And then 4 1/3. Okay, so I want you to compare those two numbers. How would you do that? Anybody have an idea of what we can do to compare them? Square root 17, you could make that a decimal, which is 4.123. Anyone see a different way you could do it without plugging it into your calculator? What is the square root of 17 close to? Square root of 16, which is 4, right? So if it's a number in a square root that's close to a perfect square, that you feel comfortable like, oh, I know that's less than this, or I know that's more than this, you don't have to use your calculator. Now this one, 4 1/3, is 4.3 repeating. So if you don't know that the square root of 17 is 4.1, not 4.3 something, then plug it in, okay? I would have plugged this one in. This is a good one to plug in. What symbol is going to go between those? Less than, right? 4.1 is less than 4.3 repeating. Okay, so you're going to put that less than symbol in there. What about this one? The square root of 129. How does that compare to 11.52? What are you going to do with that? I would plug it in again, because this is close to the square root of 121, which is 11, but we don't know 11.5, 11 point, what is it? So plug it into your calculator. 129 is 11.35. Okay, what symbol are you going to put between there? Less than again. This square root of 129 is less than 11.52. How about negative 3 2/3 compared to negative 3.75. Okay, and now this one, negatives you have to be really careful with because when they look bigger, they're actually smaller, right? Negative 3 2/3 is actually negative 3.6 repeating. And if you just look at the number 3.6 versus 3.7 as positives, which one's bigger? 3.7, right? As negatives, when you think about a number line, here's 0, here's -1, here's -2, here's -3. You would get to negative 3.6 before you would get to negative 3.7, right? So just be careful when it's negative. If the number appears bigger, it's actually smaller as a negative. So that means in this setup, which one is the bigger number? Negative 3.6 or negative 3.7? The 6 is bigger, okay? So this is going to be greater than. Okay? Questions on that? All right, one last thing. I told you this one's a lot shorter. What did I do? Did I do 4? Yeah. All right, example 5. We're going to say put these in order. Least to greatest. Put these in order, least to greatest. And then we're going to graph it. So we're going to start with these numbers. The square root of 4, 0.4, negative 2/3, the square root of 2, and negative 1.5. Okay, so we're looking at all these numbers. How do we compare them? What should we do to them? Make them all decimals. Disappear. That would be cool. Make them all decimals, right? So we're going to break it down. What's the square root of 4? 2. So we have a 2. This one's still going to be 0.4. That's already a decimal. God bless you. What's negative 2/3 as a decimal? 0.6 repeating, right? So 0.6 repeating, and it's negative. The square root of 2, just plug into your calculator. You get 1.41, we'll call it. And then this one's negative 1.5. Okay, so your job is to put these in order. I don't want this number. I want this number. Okay, so make sure you're putting the numbers you were given in order, not the ones you turned them into. What is your smallest number right now? Negative 1.5, right? Your negatives are always going to be the smallest one, so negative 1.5. Okay, so this one's done. What's going to come next? Which is actually what? Negative 2/3. So it is this, right? But don't use that one. Use the negative 2/3. Okay, so our negatives are done. What's your next smallest? 0.4, which was a 0.4. So you can put that in as 0.4. Then what? Which is the square root of 2. Okay, so the square root of 2, and then the square root of 4. So that's your order. Okay, but then they say graph it. So we're going to put this on a number line. So go ahead and draw. Let's just make this straight because that's a really goofy line. Okay, draw a number line. We'll go, oops, too big. Get my ruler out of there. So if this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and negative 1, negative 2, you can just leave it at that. Your job is to put these on the number line as close as you can to where they should be. Okay, so we said our smallest is negative 1.5, which was a negative 1.5. So you can just write that as negative 1.5. So if you go between 1 and 2, right in the middle, put a negative 1.5 right above that. Okay, and don't put it below, because I want to see just your regular number line numbers below. Put your answer above. The second one is negative 2/3. Well, if you think that's going to be closer to 1, negative 1 than 0, so negative 2/3 would be about here. Okay. Your next one is 0.4. Now think about where that is. That's close to 0.5, which would be halfway, but it's a little below that. So you're going to go a little less than halfway between 0 and 1 and call that 0.4. Then the square root of 2, that was 1.4. So if you think about where that would fall, that's a little than halfway again, but we're calling it the square root of 2. And then the last one, the square root of 4, is nice and easy, falls right on the 2, but we're calling it the square root of 4. Okay, so when we say put them in order, you do this. When we say graph it, you do this. Questions on that? Okay, I'm going to do one more of those just because they can tend to get a little wonky because you're switching things around, and then we're done. Let's do (3.5) negative 2.1, the square root of 9, negative 7/2, and the square root of 5. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn them into decimals. Fortunately, we already have 2 that are decimals. So 3.5, negative 2.1, this would be 3, right? The square root of 9. What's negative 7/2? Negative 3.5, right? Divide them instead of multiply them. And then the square root of 5, plug it into your calculator, you get 2.236. Really, you only need 2.2 to tell the difference between your other ones. You don't even need that. But just give it a couple decimal places, okay? All right, so if we're going to put these in order, which one is my smallest? The negative 3.5 or the negative 7/2, right? This one would be the smallest. So we're going to start there, negative 7/2. Remember, when they're negative, the bigger they look, the smaller they actually are, right? So that's the first one. What's the second one? Negative 2.1. Okay. What would come next? 2.236, which is the square root of 5. Okay, so this one's done. Then what? The square root of 9. Okay, and then the biggest one, 3.5. Okay, so this is your order. We're going to graph it. So take your number line. Remember, we want to space everything out evenly. So put a 0, and then 1, 2, 3, as best you can, space it out. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Okay. Where are you going to put your answers? Excuse me, on top. So put the points on the number line, put the numbers above it, okay? So a negative 7/2 was a negative 3.5. So that's going to go here. But we're calling it negative 7/2 because that's what they gave it to us as. Second one, we have a negative 2.1. So that's going to be slightly to the left of the negative 2, right? Negative 2.1 would be here. So negative 2.1. Then we have the square root of 5, and if you look up here, that was 2.236. So 2.236, we'll put that here, but that was the square root of 5. Then we have the square root of 9, which is 3. We like those whole numbers. And then we have, oops, I wrote square root of 3 instead of the square root of 9. Sorry. And then last one, 3.5 would be right here. Okay? Questions on that?